So Black Adam, the movie that we have made fun of, has it reached $391 million at the box office. Well, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, has already surpassed that. That is very, very impressive when you think about it.
Man, sequel stories back to back, Brett.
But this isn't just about this, guys.
Not a Christmas decoration in sight.
I also want to talk about, and I've got some notes here. Me and Mary were talking about. We got some comments about people asking. Like it doesn't need to make $2 billion to become profitable. And I was like, okay, how much money does it need to make? Like it doesn't need to be 2 billion, because it felt like James Cameron was being intentionally vague about what they had to make to get to profitability. Like he said 2 billion. Did he mean the second and the third ones have to make 2 billion? Well, okay, so I'm going to go through this first. I want to, because literally my ADD, like I was able to channel past my ADD and like frantically work on this. Now, I'm horrible at math, so anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at the very least my assumptions about what needs to happen are accurate here. So the assumptions are that a movie budget is movie budget plus marketing is a movie budget times 1.5. That is your movie budget plus your marketing. That's your whole enchilada. Your other assumptions are that the studio keeps 60% of the box office domestically. We're going to round up here and say, we're just going to say 60% all like wholesale. We're not going to include
the craziest word problem of all time.
We're not going to include China, which keeps 75% of the box office, commies. And then also it's that the movie has to make double its budget plus marketing to become profitable. So the idea here is that if the end goal is 2 billion, 60% of that would be 1,200 million, right? Mm-hmm. So the budget for this movie was $350 million. It's at 350 to 400. We're going to be generous and say low end $350 million. So $350 million times 1.5 is $525 million. Mm-hmm. So that means that if you take 525 million times 2, that's $1,500 million. Or I'm sorry, $1,050 million. So he actually lowballed. So if they made double, they would make it just under. You see what I'm saying?
Can you imagine having a project where you're like, you need to make $2 billion to just barely.
This is like, who the hell, like, what coke snorting stockbroker was like, yeah, we'll bet $2 billion the whole hog on this. Like
I said to you before. And I think part of it is that these studios are working like collaboratively, right? So like they're like, yeah, maybe Avatar will lose something, but maybe something else will make money. Like, come out in the wash for us.
Well, a lot of times like they chalk it up to like, okay, will it make the money back in market? Will it make the money back in merchandise? Will it make the money back in streaming? Disney Plus, will it bring eyes to Disney Plus?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. It gets pay VOD and stuff like that. Afterwards,
right.
Some people will pay to rent it and stuff like that. So basically the idea here is that Black Adam made $391 million total worldwide by the end of its run. Mm-hmm. Avatar is now sitting at $555.9 million after the first week. In the first week of Avatar, it made $134 million. Black Adam made $167 total domestically. Like I said, who's making these bets to take that type of risk on something like this? And the thing is, like, Disney is struggling. Like even after making like $555 million, it's not helping Disney. Their stock is down. Mm-hmm. Like their shares are the lowest they've been since 1974.
I mean, if you were in their position, like, why would you take this risk? What do you think their motivation is?
Like, well, I mean, I don't know if it's because they trust James Cameron. If the idea here is like, look, you can also put Avatar in the theme parks. That makes sense. Like if you bring Avatar to Disneyland, like you're going to make money on the back end there with merchandise.
Sure, but you still have to invest money, right? You have to pay to make the merchandise. You have to pay to convert the rides to have the Avatar logo. Like on top of the movie budget, they are asking to invest even more to become, like, at a certain point, you're just throwing good money after bad, I would assume. Unless this becomes, the way Harry Potter, right? Like took off and had such an intense fan base that spanned generations. Like you could put those logos on anything and make money, but I just don't see Avatar being this type of series, especially knowing they have 2 more movies after this, like
at least. Well,
and when are those coming out? Because this one took 13. Like
they're already through most of the principal photography for 3 and 4, and
I just feel like
there's
that's
a 9-hour cut sitting around right now for Avatar 3 that he's making them animate every scene entirely before they edit, rather than,
which is like, if I were the producer on this, it'd be like, are you kidding? Because you have to pay all the animators to then cut all of it. Like somebody.
No, not cut it. Edit, completely animate it that he then cuts down in post.
But that's what I mean. Like they're gonna cut it out. So
Yeah.
like they're gonna spend the time to pay to animate it to leave it on the like cutting room floor. Like that is like just literally throwing $500,000 out the window.
And think about this: an hour of recorded film. When I was in film school, an hour of recorded film usually equates to about a minute of actual screen time. So we've got like Edie Falco, who played the general, the least believable general in history in the last movie, said they filmed it so long ago she thought the movie had already come out and did badly.
I saw that headline. Oh my gosh, I think that's amazing. Can you imagine? You're like, I just won't talk about it either. Then none of us can say anything.
Caper 2X says he thinks the billion has to do with the other movies. He said that he thinks that it has to do with making the other movies as well. I don't think so. If this movie had a budget of $350 million, which means $525 million just to...
and that's the low end of the budget.
And that's the low end of the budget before you take into account the fact that the studio only keeps 60% of that profit or of that income on the high end, because 40% goes to the studio, more if you're overseas. Like I said, China keeps 75%. It might be a little bit less than that in the rest of Europe. But here's the thing. Avatar is going to make more money overseas. The first Avatar movie made most of its money in Europe, not in America.
That's super cool for them and everything. But like, is there enough money to be made in Europe to make back $2 billion? Also, like, what is the next one, right? If he was like, I don't know. I get the weird impressions from James Cameron. Every time we talk about him, like, I feel like he's like, I'm going to do what I want and the studio's going to deal with it.
It's very dorky.
Or like a little bit narcissistic. Like, he's like, no matter what I do, I know that I'm right. And so if this one needs $2 billion to make the money back. Like, I initially, Caper 2X, right, initially, when we said that, like, a couple weeks ago or whatever, I thought it was all of the movies because it's such a big number. But your math stands. You're even being generous, like on the low hand. He probably needs to make closer to $3 billion if it's a higher budget.
Yeah.
So what is the next budget going to be like? The next movie, he's going to spend even more money because if this one succeeds at all, he's going to be like, I was right. Let's keep going. Again, this is me speculating. Please don't sue me for defamation, Mr. Cameron. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, where is the limit for him? And also, who enforces it? You know?
Well, he gets a lot of leeway. Like that's the thing.
He clearly gets a lot of leeway.
The reason that these studios like to use lesser known directors now is because they can boss them around and they don't have the creative freedom. Mm-hmm. If you're a James Cameron, if you're a Christopher Nolan, you have the pedigree to be like, this is what we're doing. Like Christopher Nolan, I'm gonna recreate a nuclear explosion for Oppenheimer.
Which one is the guy who was like? Yeah, he was one who was like, hey,
he crashed an airplane into an airplane hangar for Tenet. Like, because,
gosh.
But hey, I'm here for it. I'm here for the practical effects. But like, he's gonna keep, like, Caper 2X points out, yes, that was the next thing I was talking about. He's keeping the illustrator and the technical support team for continuity. Like, the best thing he can do is get these things done together.
Sure, but like,
there's not a huge history
you're keeping
of those
the same people, but you're still paying them, right? Like, it just becomes this thing where like, if you. I don't know. Also, what's the timeline? Like, how long does he have to make the $2 billion off the movie?
We were like, me and Mary were joking. It's like by the time the last one comes out, she'll have like her grandkids will be going to see it by the time the last one comes out.
No, it's crazy. Also, like, are you saying that in the course of forever, he eventually needs to make $2 billion, or does he need to make $2 billion in the first year?
I do believe that it's the first one.
I mean, but like, if this one, you're saying in the first year after it comes out?
No, I'm saying that all in, it needs to make at least $2 billion for this movie to become profitable.
Sure.
It probably won't do that in its first run. Remember, the first Avatar movie didn't get all that movie in the first run. It re-released several times. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is going to have the legs that the first one did because the same type of unique peaked interest isn't there.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to see it, and I think it's going to do well this weekend because it's the holidays.
Well, and remember when the first one came out was completely unknown quantity, whereas now people know I need Carter Banks to be here to be like, I liked it.
He loved it.
What happened? But doesn't it, like, in some ways, and maybe this is me being a little bit defiant, like, hearing these like crazy bloated budgets, or coupling it with Spider-Man, they're gonna have a fourth Spider-Man. It makes me want to find like the super low budget movies that are coming out there and like watching them explode. Wasn't that true of like Paranormal Activity? It was made with like no money and then it became this phenomenon.
But the problem is with that is like, if you look at a character like Spider-Man, if we're talking character like Spider-Man, and you look at all the money it's making on merch, does it make business sense to run low end?
I mean, it's not business sense. I don't care what the studios do. They obviously never listen to me.
They never
Brett.
do.
But
they will one day.
But just generally as a consumer, like, I wonder what else is out there, you know? Like, I wonder what are we missing, because there's a history of movies that are made for what, like $30,000, and then they do really well. And
I mean, the horror, not 30,000, but like there's
Clerks was like 30,000.
There's horror movies that are made for like a couple million that end up making hundreds of millions of dollars and stuff.
Okay,
like
I'll
that.
even give it $1 million, but like, I just want to know, like, do you feel like it would be better to spend, like, how big would you think about $300 million for this movie? Maybe, probably more.
I think they do it because they want to make the money on the theme parks and stuff. Like the $3 million movie that ends up making $127 million doesn't inspire merch.
But how profitable are theme parks, right? Didn't we just
Disney
let Bob Chapek go, and he was the head of their theme parks for years? Like,
yeah, but they didn't let him go in that capacity. They let him go in the capacity. Thank you.
Wow.
They let him go in the capacity.
Brett, do you enjoy
CEO.
this Christmas
I
music?
love this Christmas music and theme. No, Disney.
Brett, what's your favorite Christmas
Disney
carol?
makes like $14 billion a quarter on theme parks.
I get that, but like, I just think that this is not like. I feel like there is no way that any studio production is like
a good example.
Well, we don't think we'll make the money back in movie sales, but you know what? We'll make it back in.
Yeah.
What the heck is happening? Theme parks.
What do you mean? What's happening? That's a crisis party.
Oh my gosh! I guess I don't.
It's a Christmas party.
I don't sit this. I don't sit this.
It's
close.
a Christmas party.
Can you imagine if we'd gotten launchers that like launched ornaments across the room?
Okay,
or
I'll give you a better example of a movie that did it well. The first John Wick movie was made on a very, very small budget because it just wasn't expected to become the hit that it was. The signature style of that movie, meaning that the extremely involved action scenes that Keanu does himself, that are filmed wide.
Yeah.
So you can actually see his face, wasn't done on purpose. It was done because they said they literally couldn't afford more shots and more cameras to pull for coverage.
Yeah.
So it actually developed its style based on necessity rather than stylistic choice.
Yeah.
But it became the style, and now the budgets go up and the movie does better, but it still won't capture, like, in my opinion, that first John Wick movie is classic.
Yeah.
The rest of them are just really good.
Me being like rolling my eyes at this like gargantuan budget, right? It doesn't really matter. I am curious about the decisions and how they get made. Like, that's what interests me about this whole process. Who decides that Avatar 2 can be expected to make $2 billion, and also what's the timeline for that? Whereas like a different
when
franchise
do they get
doesn't.
to write it off?
Right. Like, and if you're saying, oh, they think they'll make money off the theme parks, like, well, that's actually a whole different department of their business. Like, I want to know how integrated, and it's not, for me, it's not just Avatar, like any of the MCU universe or anything else. Like, where do we see the cash flow coming from?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter ultimately. Like I said, much to my chagrin, they don't listen to me.
It's tough when that happens.
But like, what is the business model? And at that point, and again, I'll just say this, like, it's because that's what they're feeding consumers. And when you get a consumer a taste for something, that you can cultivate it, right? And if you're expecting them to just expect, you know, these huge, long, I seriously suspect there's no plot in this movie.
Avatar?
Oh yeah,
there's a plot in Avatar.
I don't believe you, because he was like, "You're gonna have to go to the bathroom."
No,
like I've been saying,
there's a plot in Avatar.
Yeah, okay, Brett. What's the plot?
It's family oriented. It's literally about
You didn't even give me a plot. You just said it's family oriented.
The movie is about him being hunted down by the military industrial complex and trying to keep his family safe. That's what it's about.
There's gonna be no plot.
Okay. Here's the other thing. Streaming killed the type of movie that you're talking about. The movie that you're talking about, meaning that they could make it for a certain amount of money, maybe it makes half of its budget to 3/4 of its budget back in theaters, was always be counted on to make its money back and become profitable in digital sales, or I'm sorry, in DVD sales and like pay-per-view, when pay-per-view is a big thing. We did a topic about this where Matt Damon talked about how streaming killed that type of mid-budget movie.
Yeah.
There is no longer a place for the mid-budget movie in theaters.
Pretty wild.
Because streaming is where mid-budget. It's why Bros was such a head scratcher. Like, why would a movie that would clearly have thrived for a certain demographic or a certain market in streaming would have done fine? Why would you release that in theaters when you know it's not going to make any money? There isn't a place for it anymore.
That's fascinating. It's like our shrinking, disappearing middle class, along
kind of
with our mid-budget movies. That is really interesting.
So that's kind of that's why all you're getting is, like I said, coked out stockbroker on Wall Street bets on movies that are like either it makes a bunch of money back, and I'm sure they have very creative accountants that find ways to write off things that don't profit, right? Like they can write it off in in tax loss.
Who knows?
Like, so here's the other thing about the movie underperforming is they talk about Disney's stock failing. And I was wondering, like, what would be a movie that would be an analog to it that you could compare it to what it made? And the best thing that I could think of was not Avengers Endgame, but Infinity War, because Infinity War made just over $2 billion in its final run. And here's the thing. It made $257 million in its opening weekend. So it's already about $100 million, a little over $100 million behind what Infinity War made in its opening weekend.
But it's only been released in the U.S. so far.
No, this movie is cut, like the amount I gave you was it made $134 million domestically. It made the rest of that $555 million domestic opening worldwide.
Yeah.
So the money it's made, it's fairly analogous to what Avengers Infinity War made, but it's behind the 8 ball here. But like I said, somebody said, I thought Avatar 2 wasn't doing good. It's not. Like, I'm just saying that it made more. It puts Black Adam into perspective, that Black Adam really was a bust, because Black Adam had a budget. We just found out the other day, the Black Adam budget ballooned to like $260 million with reshoots. So think about this. Avatar was $350 million, low end. Black Adam was $260 million, so only $100 million difference there, and the entire
if it's low end, to be fair, it could be up to $500 million.
No, up to $400.
$400?
No, we're not talking about with marketing budget. We're just talking about the money put into making the movie. So Avatar was $350 million. We'll say low end. The firm budget on Black Adam was $260 million. So about a $90 million difference. But Black Adam's entire run was made in the first week by Avatar. So is it on pace to make $2 billion? I don't think so. But is it probably enough that it will spawn the sequels just because they'll be able to make the money back? But
the sequels are guaranteed, right?
Yes, either way.
Like we're that's what I also find fascinating, to go to your like crazy Wall Street bets. It doesn't even need to make the money back for the studio to say, okay, we'll go with the sequel. Like, the sequel is guaranteed no matter what.
They're already working on
it. We gave Cameron tenure, right? Like, he doesn't need to do anything. And in some ways, I guess that gives you security. Like, you don't have to have like a secondary plot to try and like make it work.
And the thing is that's inherited. He came from Fox. Because the first one was 20th Century Fox. This was something that Disney gobbled up in the 20th Century Fox merger. Also, the Big Sleepy says sperm budget. No, I said firm budget, but close. So, thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.